joined by Mia. How are you
Oh,
today?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So, my name is Mia. I am 20 years old and I'm a journalism student. I do a little bit of freelance work for LadBible. I'm currently filming a documentary about period poverty in the UK. Isn't it funny when someone asks you to tell yourself a little bit about themselves, they always go straight for like the career stuff instead of
Yeah.
instead of like, because I actually once had an interview with it wasn't an interview, it was like a little Zoom call with like a BBC journalist, and he was like, tell me a little bit about yourself, and I was like, he's like, why have you just jumped straight for career things? But
It's so
I,
sad that we have to like go to career to
I
describe
know, I
yourself,
know.
but
Yeah, so I met you at King's College because I
yeah.
started at King's College. Once I left sixth form, I always knew I wanted to be a journalist. And I actually wanted to do the BBC apprenticeship. And that was like my goal. I got through to like the second round and like nothing came of it. So I was like, oh, I'll just go to King's College. Not just go to King's College, but like to me,
Just
like the goal was
casually.
journalism. Yeah, just go to King's College. But no, I was lucky enough to get in. I actually have a theory that if it wasn't for coronavirus, I wouldn't have got into King's College because we kind of like our teachers kind of like told us what was on the exams.
Oh,
Well, not told us what was on, but like they gave us some clues. Um,
maybe don't spill the name of the school.
oh
Just-
yeah, no, I won't. I won't. I won't. So yeah, I went to King's College. I studied, well, I didn't finish my time at King's College. I dropped out after a year. I studied philosophy, ethics, and religion. I really liked the course. It was very interesting, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to be a journalist at heart. And yeah, I joined News Associates. They are like the UK's number one journalism school, really super cool, like place. And yeah, loved it. I've been there a year. I've got 2 more years left, and then I will graduate with a multimedia journalism degree and my NCTJ, which is really handy if you want to get into journalism.
That sounds so interesting. So, obviously, I know you from King's, and I met you while you were a student, but you dropped out to pursue
Mhm.
your passions, to pursue your dreams. And that's something a lot of people may be thinking of, like university students or even school leavers who might think, is university even for me? So, can you tell us about why you made that decision? Do you regret going to King's in the first place? And kind of what was going through your head?
So when I started King's, to be honest, it was more. I more started at King's to move to London. To be honest, I was thinking. I knew I always wanted to get a degree. I've always been kind of academic, so I knew I wanted to get a degree. Whether that is the right thing or not, I've just been doing some work experience at a production company in London, and they actually said to me like sometimes university just isn't worth it, and a lot of the people
Mm,
that work there now that are like executive producers, they didn't go to uni, they just kind of. And I've actually got a friend, Maddie Scott, who I went to sixth form with. She didn't go to university, she wanted to work in TV, and she's just been absolutely killing it, just like getting different like work here and there. She's moved to Glasgow, like she's just like absolutely killing it. So I think it's totally dependent on what you want to do going to university.
mm,
It's definitely not necessary to get into TV production. Journalism, I also don't think it's necessary for journalism, but I do think getting the NCTJ, if you want to be in any capacity a journalist, is a really good idea. But yeah, going to King's College, I would never ever regret that decision because I met my best, like two of my bestest friends, Hannah and Grace. You probably know them.
yeah.
Um, and honestly, it was just like to live in central London for student accommodation. Like it's just something I'm never gonna do ever again. And we just had the best time, like living in student halls with like your best friends. Like honestly, it's like I always say it was the best year of my life. Like so far, obviously I'm only 20, but like it was just incredible. And I loved the course, I loved my like lecturers. But yeah, what was going through my head at the time when I dropped out, I think it got to Christmas and I was doing like your mid-year exams, and I was just sitting there writing an essay, and I was like, this is just not like, I'm not enjoying this. Like, I
Mhm.
think it's interesting, but it's not what I want to do. You can't become a philosopher. That's not a job. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
a lot of transferable skills you can get from that course, and it is very interesting, as I said. But I just think for me, it wasn't the course for me. And I think
Mm,
it's I think it's a really good message to send to sixth formers, college students, anyone who wants to go to university. It's really common to do the first year or half the year and think, actually, this isn't for me. And I think before you make that decision to go to university, 3 years is a very long time to be in
Mm,
one city studying one subject. Like you're used to studying like three different subjects at A level or like a range of subjects at school. So to study one subject for 3 years, that's kind of why I went for philosophy, ethics, and religion, because I thought it was a bit of a
yeah.
variety. But yeah, to study one subject for 3 years is a lot. So it's got to be something you enjoy. Like I am on as you probably are, student like summer break now for uni,
Mhm.
and I can't wait to go back to do my degree. Obviously, I dropped out of King's, but I did go to another uni, so I've carried on doing a
Mhm.
degree. Um, but I also think a degree is just really good to fall back on. If I don't make it as a journalist, I always have that to go and do like
Yeah.
teaching. Like, do you know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
is a good backup, and I don't think it should be like the be all or end all if you've not got a degree,
Mhm.
because there's so many successful people that they don't have a degree, and it's absolutely
Yeah.
fine. But for me, it's always something I wanted to get. And yeah, I think you can do so many kinds of different ones. It's not just sitting down doing essays like a red brick classic uni was.
Yeah.
My uni, it's not actually a uni, it's a company, and they collaborate with Plymouth University. And it's so practical. It's almost like I'm doing an apprenticeship, but I'm not because I'm paid to do it. But it's very hands-on, very just like you're working the job, but you're learning at the same time. And there's like 14 people on my course
Oh,
in
wow.
comparison to like King's College, yeah, where there was like
Yeah.
there can be hundreds and hundreds of people sitting in a lecture hall, and I was too scared to put my hand up. I'm never going to say like, actually, I don't get that in front of like hundreds of people, like no
Yeah.
way. But so yeah, I prefer that classroom. I always made a joke like I was never ready to leave school because I didn't go to college. I went to sixth form and then I dropped out of uni to go to like a small, tiny uni.
Mm.
So yeah, I love it. I learn more in that environment, being hands-on. I love it. I'm a very practical person. And yeah, I love every second of it. And I think if you don't love, not that you love every second of your degree, because there's definitely going to be times, as you know, where the going gets tough and you're up
Yeah.
at 2
Yeah.
a.m. trying to finish an essay. But yeah, if you don't love what you're doing, there's no point in doing it, in my opinion. But yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's so inspiring to hear, your journey so far. And I mean, it's only the beginning. I mean, you've literally just started and you're writing for such amazing platforms like Reader's
Oh,
Digest and LadBible, and it's such an impressive accomplishment. So can you share maybe just a few, if you can, of your favorite stories that you've covered and perhaps the impact they've had on the audience?
okay, so I don't know how much of an impact this had on the audience. This was just more of an accomplishment for me as a writer. I interviewed the director of Newsies. It's a musical that came from America or Broadway to the West End last year. I think it was, well, it was when I was in King's College, so it was either 1 year or 2 years ago. And I was like, oh, I love this musical. Like, I really, really want to be a part of it in some way. And I'm not in musical theatre at all. Like, I tried it when I was little, it's not for me. So I was like, how can I get involved? So I was like, right, I'm going to Instagram DM. And this is a really key takeaway message. If I forget to spin back to this, remind me. I messaged the director of the musical. He's called Matt Cole. He's won like Olivia Awards, choreographer, director. He is absolutely incredible. And I messaged him. I was like, I'm a student. I was working for Raw at the time, not working. I was like doing that was another thing at uni I forgot to say. One of the reasons I dropped out was because I was spending more time at Raw News than I was doing my degree. Um, anyone who doesn't know, Raw News was King's College student publication. So I messaged Matt Cole. He got back to me like 100%, I'd love to set up an interview with you. And I was like, this is not real life. Like, of course, he's not just said he wants to do an interview with me, someone who's working for their student paper. Anyway, he did. And it took absolutely months to set it up. Like with these interviews, you'll find that like they just go on and on and on and on. A bit
Yeah.
like our one. We've been
Yeah.
planning it for ages. Um, but people are really busy, and especially people like him. He was super busy, and I think I actually got the first interview with him for the musical, so I was like absolutely gassed. And I had all my questions laid out in front of me, like palms sweating, absolutely terrified. And I just went for it. And it was the coolest story I've ever wrote to this day. Like it was so fun. And I actually got invited to the press night of Newsies, and it was the most incredible show ever. Like just like every single detail. I'm a bit of a musical theatre fan. Well, I'm a lot of a musical theatre fan. Absolutely love. So it's definitely one of my proudest pieces that I've done. I also wrote a lot of these are for Raw News, which is really funny. But do you know what I liked about student publications? Anyone who's in uni doing something different but wants to go into writing or journalism or anything, the beauty about student papers is you can choose what you write about. I think that's why they're my favorite
Yeah.
articles, is
Yeah.
because I totally had creative control. Whereas if you work for LadBible or Reader's Digest, you get told what to write. Well, I did like pitch the Reader's Digest one, so that was my idea. But for LadBible, a lot of the time it's like you get what you're given and that is what you write. And I love that. Like I love that job. But the ones I wrote for Raw News were really special to me. I also got an award for an article I wrote at Raw News. It was like an album 2021 album review, I think it was. And I just went through all the best albums of the year because I love music as well. So that was fun. I would the certificate, what was it? The Youth Journalism International Award for that one. So that was cool. I've done so many pieces I love, but the Newsies one is definitely up there. The Reader's Digest one I've just done, really, really cool. Obviously I said I was filming a documentary about period poverty, and one of the girls I was interviewing is called Lucy. And she mentioned to me, obviously, because I'm coming into this as a journalist, I'm not coming into it as an activist. So I
Mhm.
didn't totally know everything about like feminism campaigning and all the terminology. And it
Mm.
wasn't new to me, but a lot of the like the lingo,
Yeah.
like the pink tax, I had no idea what the pink tax was. And I said, what's one of like the main issues we could like resolve to conquer period poverty? And she
Mhm.
said something about the pink tax. And I was like, at the time, I didn't ask her what it was because I didn't want to look unprofessional. But I got back home and I researched it. I was like, wow, I've never heard of this. This is really disgusting that women, obviously, subconsciously I'd seen it. Like, obviously, women pay more for men than certain
Mhm.
things, and it's just ridiculous. But I didn't know there was like a name for it. So I was like, this would be really interesting to write about. But yeah, the Reader's Digest article was really, really good. So yeah, there are a couple of the pieces that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, and I love your pieces. I think they're really interesting. I think everyone should go read through them. But
Oh, thank
touching back on your documentary,
Yeah.
so your upcoming documentary, it's about period poverty. Period poverty.
Mm.
It's hard to say for a second. It's an essential project shedding light on a very critical issue, and I think it affects not just women, but everyone.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
kind of, so what motivated you to actually start this in the first place?
Well, at News Associates, I'm a massive plug for News Associates if you want to do journalism. Like they're just the best of the best. All their trainees have gone on to do incredible things. So at News Associates, you can get a bursary for £1,000 every summer to do
Mhm.
whatever you want to do with journalism. So you can go and do a work experience placement. One of my friends, Lydia, she worked at the BBC for 8 weeks, like absolutely incredible achievement. Like she's so cool. And she's really into women's sports. So she did a lot about that at the BBC. And you get £1,000 bursary to go and do, because often it like work experience placements in journalism, they're not paid, and I totally understand why. There's not a lot of money in the industry at the minute, but yeah, so to enable us to do that, they give us the bursary. And I wanted to get some work experience, and I did in the end get it at the production company Firecracker, and I worked a bit on Stacey Dooley's documentaries. But I wanted to do something myself off my own initiative, because going back to the guy I spoke to at the BBC, I was at my absolute wits end. I would email people every single day for about 4 months trying to get work experience, and every time it was no, 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 no. And that's another thing about this industry. You have to have such a thick skin because there are so many knockbacks. And he was like, I don't like, there's so much in just creating something off your own initiative. Like, he said, don't wait for permission to be a journalist. And I was just like, oh my God, why have I never thought about this? It's like, what is something I'm really passionate about and like a absolute dream of mine? I want to make a documentary. And I was like, right, I want to do it about female issues because I'm a female and I'm really passionate about like female issues.
Mhm.
So I was looking through a couple on Google and none were hitting the spot. And I was on my period and I was just like, oh, I'm just a bit like, feel a bit rubbish. And I was like, there must be people out there in the UK, we're in a cost of living crisis, that can't afford their period. It's an expensive thing when you think about it. For something we don't
Yeah.
like choose to have, it is expensive. So I was like, there must be, and obviously, as I said before, I'm not familiar with all the terminology. So I just kind of typed into Google like can't not being able to afford period products. So I thought there'd be an article about it on like the Guardian usually do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Turns out it's called period poverty and it's a huge issue. And I was like, this is what I need to look at. This is my thing. This is what I'm going to hone in on. And then I just got in contact with a couple of charities. A couple actually didn't want to be involved, which I was really surprised about. Not because, not like tooting my own horn, why did they not want to be in my
Yeah.
document? But any exposure in any way is kind of like positive
Yeah.
in my opinion. So, but I got in contact with the lovely Molly Fenton at Love Your Period. They're two Welsh sisters in Wales. Obviously, they're Welsh. Um, and they campaign tirelessly, not just for an end to period poverty, an end to just a lack of education on female issues, endometriosis, PCOS, all of it. And they're incredible. So she really set me on the right track in terms of, because when I came into this, there was so much to learn about periods. I did not realize how little I knew about period, my own period. Like that, even the word was a little bit to be like, oh, period. Like we're not going to talk about that, are we? Yes, we are. Absolutely, we are. And that was the whole reason I wanted to do it. And honestly, throughout the whole process, I have become less of a journalist and more of an activist. Like, I am so passionate about. I've joined actually the Love Your Period group chat because I want to campaign with them afterwards. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, when I'm shedding light on it through the documentary, but it's in no way resolved. Like, absolutely not. And I think people in 2023, a lot of people I've spoken to, they're like, "Oh, what are you doing? I'm filming a documentary, blah blah blah, about period poverty." What, people can't afford their period? Are you
Yeah.
joking? Like it's £3. Well, if you can't afford to put food on the table, if you go into a food bank, what makes them think they can afford their period? Like it's just not, it's not
Yeah.
feasible. Um, and it's so much more than not being able to afford your period. It's also like period dignity. I was talking to a couple of girls in a high school and in England and Wales, and I think Scotland as well, forgive me if that is not right, but I think it is. Period products are free for all school children,
Mhm.
but they're not accessible. So they might have to go and ask their school caretaker for
Yeah.
a pad or a tampon. I'm not being funny. When I was 15, 16, there is absolutely not a chance in the world, even if I really needed a product, would I
Mhm.
go and ask the school caretaker, who's usually a man. So
Yeah.
I just wouldn't have done that. And I think to make them free is a really great step, but to make them accessible is like really needs to happen. And also not just for, it's not just school children that get their period. You get your period till you have the menopause. So there's just a whole range. When you start researching this issue, it really angered me. Like I got
Yeah.
really angry on behalf of women because you don't talk about your period. I went to a Catholic school, so we had 5 lessons in my whole, we had one lesson a year on PSE. So that's 5 lessons in the whole time I was in high school. Like that's just
Mhm.
absolutely ridiculous. And it's always like a female teacher who's a bit, well, it's not always, in my case it was, who didn't really know what she was talking about, because I don't blame her, there's no education for anyone.
Yeah.
But if they could get like a nurse in or someone who knows what they're talking about more regularly, all we get is this is your ovaries and this is what happens. No one teaches you how to put a tampon in, but a
Mm.
lot of schools show you how to put a condom on a banana. Do you know what I mean? So is that,
Yeah.
obviously that's important, but how to put a tampon in, what your period actually is, the practicalities of it is equally as important.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you can see, I'm very passionate. But
No, no, I'm with you because it's really upsetting to see that periods are such a stigmatized topic. People don't talk about it, but nearly all women get their periods. And
absolutely.
it's not just students who suffer. I mean, it's still surprising to me that workplaces don't have
Mm,
complimentary pads and tampons in their bathrooms when all
absolutely.
they're like, but you have complimentary coffee. I think it's silly to compare the two, but it's a
Yeah,
necessity. Like
yeah,
I would argue that pads may be more of a necessity than coffee. Like it's
absolutely.
so strange that these things aren't spoken about more. And like I said, it's a very stigmatized and overlooked topic. How do you plan to approach this documentary to ensure it reaches the audience that it needs to reach? Because sure, yes, women will watch it and they'll resonate with it. They'll be like, yeah, that's so true. That's so upsetting to see this. But how will you get men to watch it? How would you get the people who actually, you know, are out there who aren't talking about it?
That's really interesting, actually. I put the trailer out the other day on Instagram and it went down really well. And I actually got a lot of positive feedback from men. And
Mm,
it was kind of something I was a bit not worried, but kind of unsure about. Like, that was one of the things coming into this. I was like, it's going to be a thing that women watch. Is it going to be a thing that men watch? And I think you definitely can't control who
yeah.
your audience is. Like, it's totally out of my control. And I
Mhm.
will, I mean, to be some, I'm going to do some like paid ads on Instagram. I'll be totally open about that. And I
Mhm.
think my target audience for a lot of those will be men, because you can pick
Yeah.
which ones. Obviously I'll do it women too, but yeah, and to be honest, it's not something I've totally thought about. But yeah, I'm just gonna put it out into the world.
Mm.
Whoever watches it. I hope they take a really powerful message from it. And I want it to make people think. It's not
Mhm.
something I'd ever thought about coming into this. I think you hear about poverty a lot, but period poverty, because it's such a stigma, you
Yeah.
just don't. It's not, I mean, the news are actually starting to cover it a little bit more now. Like, I've had a lot of press releases as a journalist, as PR companies wanting me to write about period poverty. I'm like, this is such a
Mhm.
coincidence. But yeah, to be honest, I hadn't really thought about how I obviously thought about I want men to watch it too, but I hadn't thought about how I'm going to target it at men. But I mean, the Instagram ads is one side of it. I also just think people sharing it, I would love
Yeah,
people to just
yeah,
like share the hell out of it, because not because it gets me views, because it's a really important message. Obviously, it gets me people
definitely,
views,
yeah.
but it's a universal thing, and I think a lot of it is down to a lack of education. I mean, I know the classes I had about my period, the boys weren't in, like they just weren't in the
Yeah.
classes. Well, why not? Like, you've
Mm.
probably got a sister, a mum, you're gonna have maybe a girlfriend one day who's gonna be going through all these things, and you just don't know.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's my answer. I'm not entirely sure, but I hope any men watching this watch my documentary on the 3rd of September.
Definitely, and your trailer is amazing. I think everyone should go watch that.
Thank you.
Made me
Thanks.
so
Oh my God.
excited.
It took me so long to edit, because I'm doing the whole thing by myself. My lovely boyfriend has filmed it all for me, but apart from that, I've done everything myself. So like editing the whole thing, which is a whole other nightmare. It took me like a week to edit the trailer. So to actually edit together the whole documentary. I mean, I've done it as I've gone, but I'm
Mm.
also such a perfectionist. So like
Yeah.
even down to like millisecond cuts, it's a whole thing. But
Yeah.
it's gonna be
No,
good.
but it's definitely paying off because the trailer was amazing, and
Oh,
I'm
thank
sure the
you so much.
documentary will be too. And
Really
I'm sure
appreciate
the journey of making this documentary was quite emotionally challenging because you talked to a lot of women who are suffering. And, it's a very serious topic. How do you stay motivated and focused and try not to get emotionally involved when you're filming this documentary?
Yeah, to be honest, I felt like I had to get emotionally involved. Um, I think it's impossible not to. I mean, I'm
Mm,
sitting down chatting to people who have been through the most horrendous experiences. I'm talking to girls who have had to make nappies for themselves out of toilet paper. I'm talking to campaigners who have been to Kenya, who have transactional sex to get pads and tampons.
mm,
To not be emotionally involved in that, I feel like you'd have to be a bit of a robot. But to be honest, what kept me motivated was the fact that this is not being talked about, and that's the whole reason I'm talking about it, and everyone else that is involved in it is talking about it. I didn't make this documentary. I technically I did, but it's the ladies that have been involved that have made the documentary, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without them, especially not Molly Fenton. She has been absolutely incredible. Any time I've had a question, she's answered it, and she's been amazing. But to stay motivated, it was just telling people stories. I think that
Mm,
they are the voices that haven't been heard that needed to be heard the most, especially Lucy. She was like kind of like my case study for the documentary. She'd been through it when she was in university, and some of the stories she told me were just absolutely horrendous. She had a pad could last her like 3 days on her period, which it's just not acceptable.
mm,
So to keep me motivated was the fact that people need to hear these stories, and if I'm not telling them, I don't know who is. That's not me like bigging myself up like look at me telling
mm.
these stories, but I think the light needed to be shone, and when I
Yeah.
had that idea I just ran with it because I was like, this is so important.
Mm,
And yeah, I just, as I said, the more I researched and the more I spoke to people, the more like anger built up inside me, and I was just
yeah.
like, this people need to hear about this. I haven't heard about it before. God knows how many other women haven't heard about it before,
Yeah.
and we need to, basically.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think it's so sad no one knows. No one's educated about something so important. I mean, like you said, if someone puts on a pad for 3 days, well, that could lead to health implications. No one knows that
Completely.
though. There's so many women who die of toxic shock syndrome. No one knows about what that is. I didn't even know what that was. It's
Neither.
crazy that there are like fatalities that are linked with this, but no one knows because it's not spoken about.
And
So
also
I
because it's
definitely
not
agree.
a typically men's issue either. I do
Yeah.
have the theory that if men had periods, there wouldn't be such a stigma. I mean, I was in work the other day and I'm looking like, in the toilet and I'm thinking, there's stacks and stacks and stacks of toilet roll in the corner of this toilet, right?
Mm,
Why do we not have to bring our own toilet roll to toilets? I have to bring my own tampons and pads when I'm
yeah.
on my period, but I don't have to bring my own toilet roll. Is that because men and women use toilet roll? Who knows? Probably yes.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just so sad. It's such an important topic that needs to be spoken more about.
Mm.
But, you know, staying on the topic of gender, as a young woman in this kind of journalism and on your journey of making a documentary, have you faced any challenges or bias so far as a woman? Do you think there's a lot in the industry, or even in general, not even in the industry?
To be honest, I can't say I've ever had any kind of sexism thrown at me. I've
Mhm.
heard stories from other journalists I've spoken to. I went to a press event at O2 when Virgin Media, and I met a couple of girls, and one of them, I won't name her, she said she wore a engagement ring to all her PR events because of like men just like trying to do bits and bobs,
Mm,
like moving mad, basically, moving unacceptably mad.
yeah.
And yeah, so I've heard about stuff like that. And I mean, I think definitely a long, long time ago, it was kind of a man's game, journalism, absolutely. But when you look at journalism now, I mean, unless I'm being absolutely blind, I don't think there's too much of an imbalance when you see
Mm,
presenters on the TV. You've got Kay Burley, Emma Barnett, like all these amazing female journalists just like killing it. So I've never felt any bias personally. I think definitely on a wider scale in terms of life, we have a million like problems and hurdles to overcome. Period, poverty being one of them.
mm,
Period, dignity and education being more of them. Um, and yeah, I mean, to be honest, as I said, I haven't felt biased myself. I mean, I'm in the very early days of my career, so I
mm,
might get to a job interview and think, wow, these interviewers are really sexist and I'm not getting this job because
mm.
of my gender. But yeah. I mean, no, I haven't, but maybe I am yet to. And if so, we'll take them down. We'll take them down one feminist activist at
Yes,
a time. That's another thing I've
exactly.
actually come across is the word feminism. And I know your podcast is called the F word, and I wanted to talk about this. Feminism being like a dirty word.
Mm.
I am the girl at family parties who argues with like the middle-aged uncles.
Yeah.
Like I've been that girl since I was 8 years old. I will continue to be that girl. Like it is just who I am. And the amount of argument, well, debates, we'll call them debates, about the word feminism I've had, like, oh, you're a radical, are you one of them feminists?
Mm,
Absolutely, I am, and so should you. Like, that is the
yeah,
fact that you're even asking me that question is just like alarm bells, like
yeah,
firing off my
yeah.
head. But yeah, I've definitely heard like some negativity about the word feminism, which I'm really not a big fan of at all, as in like the negativity, not feminism. I'm a feminist. Um, but yeah, apart from that, I haven't.
No, that's yeah. I'm always the one to debate because I think it's a lack of education that makes people think that feminism is all that radical feminists and, kill
But
all
I
men.
think I am a radical feminist and I love it.
You know what? As you should. As you should be a radical feminist. So finally, what are your hopes and aspirations for your career in journalism? Will you be going down into more documentaries about women's problems? Will this become a series?
Oh, I
What
hope
are
so.
you?
Hope so. Let's pray it gets commissioned by the BBC. I'm joking.
Yes.
No, it's going on YouTube. That's where it's heading. But I would like my goal is to be the second Stacey Dooley. No, I'm joking. When I joined this production company, it was kind of like a thing on my first day, like, oh, she's the Stacey Dooley super fan, like, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Which I am a Stacey Dooley super fan, but I'm also like my own person. I don't want to be known as the second Stacey Dooley, but I
Mm,
definitely want to make more documentaries. One thing I didn't anticipate is how difficult it would be. Now I understand why there is like a massive 40 team of people working on documentaries. Like to do it all myself was like a bit of a madness. But so rewarding. As long as the message gets portrayed,
mm,
that's all I want. It was all worth it. So what do I want for the future? I love writing. As much as I want to be a documentary maker, I love writing. Writing is like my thing. So I
mhm.
think just go on to do more publication stuff. I mean, the goal is to work at the BBC, like every journalist. No, I'm joking. Probably not every journalist wants to work at the BBC, but I would definitely love to. I just want to do more cool and exciting things. I definitely want to do more documentaries, and especially about women's issues, because as a woman, I feel so uneducated on
Mm,
all of these female issues. Before I started Period Poverty Doc, I didn't know anything about it. I want to do one on endometriosis. Huge, huge, huge topic
yeah.
at the
Yeah.
minute. I coming into it, I've not started the documentary yet, and it might not happen until next summer when I get the other bursary. But I don't know. I know endometriosis is where you get painful periods. Apart from that, it's all I know, and that is
Yeah.
my ignorance. But it's also down to a lack of education. So I think I'm definitely gonna, if I'm gonna do more documentaries, they're gonna be about female issues because it's what I'm passionate about, and it's what like lights the fire in my belly to make these. So yeah, definitely want to do that. Apart from that, I just want to keep. I just, to be honest, everyone says to me like, "What kind of journalist do you want to be?" And I just think I will take anything at the minute. Like, apart from sport, which I'm not. I covered the I've actually forgotten what it is for LadBible, the American football thing.
The
This
NFL? The
it
Super
might
Bowl.
the Super Bowl,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I come. Oh my God, that's so embarrassing. I was the Super Bowl like person for LadBible whilst the Super Bowl was going on. I just did it for Rihanna, to be honest. But and that was like massively out of my comfort zone because I've never gone near sport. I'm not a sports person. So I
Mm,
think apart from sports journalism, there is nothing I wouldn't try. And I would try sports journalism. Like I'm just being ridiculous by saying that. But yeah, I'm open to any opportunity that's thrown my way. And that's a really key thing for anyone who out there who wants to be a journalist. You have to do it all. You can't just be like, I want to be a sports, I want to be a culture journalist. Like, obviously, aim for it. And
mm,
one day you probably will be. But when you're at the beginning, you have to do everything and you have to be so determined, put yourself out there like relentlessly as well. Like, I'm talking be annoying. Like, to get this production placement at Firecracker, I annoyed my producer for months. Like I'm talking April to August, every week emails like, have you got my placement yet? Have you got my placement yet? And if they don't want you, they'll tell you. Do you know what I mean? Like if someone doesn't want you to work, and don't get me wrong, they do tell you like if they want you to go away. But I think it's just about being persistent, and that's something
yeah.
I'll carry through with me like through my career. Yeah, where there isn't a door to knock on, make the door and like knock it through.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a funny note to end on.
Knock all them doors down.
Knock them down. Be a radical feminist.
That's the key takeaway of this podcast episode. Be a radical
Yeah,
feminist and knock
absolutely.
all the doors down. Well, thank you
Absolutely.
so much for joining me
Well,
today.
thank you. I've
Uh,
absolutely loved it. I feel very privileged to be on this.
oh, thank you so much for making the time. And
Yeah.
I, for one, will be waiting for this documentary to be out. I will be one of the first people to watch it and I will share it everywhere. But everyone else should also be watching it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. You've been amazing. I really, I love your podcast, and I think you're going to go on to do
You.
amazing things. So I can't wait to see
Oh,
what the future holds for you.
thank you so much.